session with myself and Shabina Akhtar. Shabina, firstly, thank you so much for joining me. This will be part 2 of our session we did previously. So for those of you watching today that may not know Shabina, she is an NCPS registered counsellor and also psychotherapist, and also the founder of the business Brightway Counselling. So her work revolves around her own lived experience, her compassion, her cultural awareness, her empowerment, and also her professional integrity. So during today's session, Shabina and I will be talking about coercive control and honour-based abuse. And her aim throughout the session is to educate listeners and also challenge any misconceptions and signpost people towards support. So before we start, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box and Shabina and I will answer them as soon as possible. For those of the ladies watching this on replay, likewise, if you want to reach out to Shabina and I directly, perhaps with any questions, or you want to pop them in the comments under the video, then please do, and one of us will come back to you as soon as possible. Also, I just wanted to say, if anyone is finding the conversation particularly difficult at any point, please feel free to mute it if necessary, or if you feel you need to take some time out, that is absolutely fine as well. Shabina and I obviously fully respect that. So, firstly, Shabina, I want to talk about coercive control because it's a subject that I personally know underpins all domestic abuse. So, can you talk to us about what exactly is coercive control and perhaps why you feel it's often described as like the hidden form of domestic abuse?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I'd just like to say hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Michelle, for asking me to come back and talk about this really important area of domestic abuse. As you said, Michelle, it is often sort of like termed as that abuse, which because you can't see it, it also makes it sometimes sort of difficult for other people to understand. In actual fact, coercive control is a pattern of behaviours. So it won't just happen the one time, and it's not an isolated incident. These behaviours will start gradually. So they are designed to gain power and control over another person. And it's really important that we understand that. This is somebody deliberately behaving in a certain way in order to have that power over us. Okay, it's nothing to do with how we are as a person. We can't contribute to that. That's their behavior. Okay, and it can happen without any physical violence as well. And this is another thing that people find quite difficult to understand. Oh, he didn't, there was nothing physical. No, there wasn't, but that doesn't negate, the level of abuse, the impact of abuse that women and men suffer when in these sort of situations. So the victim, or as we can say, the survivor, gradually loses confidence. They gradually lose their freedom, and in actual fact this can happen over years, and they gradually lose their identity. So it has a real lasting impact on survivors, and it can take absolutely years for some people to regain their identity and understand what happened to them and start to rebuild their lives. So this is another reason why we're talking about it here today. It is such a debilitating way of living. It literally strips you of all of your identity, your passions in life, your hobbies, your social interactions. It impacts us in so many different ways. So I'm going to have a little look at some examples of coercive control, just so that some of the ladies can think about, okay, yeah, did that happen to me? Because sometimes we don't know if we've been in a coercive control relationship. We might think, actually, like, that was normal, because that becomes our reality. So the examples that I can think of here are things like monitoring your phone, monitoring your location via your phone. Some women may not know that there are certain apps that can be downloaded onto your phones that allow another person to see exactly where you are at any point of time. So that's really important that we educate ourselves on these kinds of things as well. It could also be controlling money. It could be that they have control of your finances. Maybe you're a woman who doesn't work and you're even more so under the control of this other person. Another way in which money is controlled is by somebody going through your bank statements. Oh, what's this one on here? Oh, like Tuesday, 2 p.m. What, like, where? Oh, yeah, okay. Where were you at 2 p.m.? Oh, you spent £50 on that. Oh, what was that about? You know, and it may not be. It could be just those subtle words within the language that can start this kind of behaviour. So really, really important that you listen to the words there, like, actually, what's he saying? What does he actually mean? Or what does she actually mean when they are doing this? Okay. Another thing that happens really, really quite often is isolating us from family and friends. Oh, what do you want to go there for? Oh no, do you remember? Oh, she said something horrible about you a couple of weeks ago. Like, what do you want to go and see her for? These kinds of conversations where it's kind of like sowing the seed, and then that doubt comes into your mind, and you think, actually, yeah, like, do I really want to go there? Oh, 6 months ago, I kind of came away from there feeling not so great. Like, do I really want to? Because what happens is the other person, the abuser, highlights those negative points and points them out, and bringing them to your attention. So again, it's a kind of gaslighting that I know Michelle has spoken about in quite some detail before as well. Yeah, so there's that too. And then there's also the constant criticism or humiliation, which many of us will be able to relate to too. It could be, maybe it's a social gathering, maybe it's a birthday party, for instance, and the abuser will use that as an opportunity to highlight your flaws or humiliate you in front of other people. And when we're subjected to this, it kind of like is chipping away at our self-confidence. So as I said, coercive control happens over time, and quite often it's when you're in a long-term relationship with somebody, and it's those little small microaggressions kind of thing, little small things that at the time you might not think are that big and you might just let it go, but when you put them all together, it's a way of really taking away any type of control that you might have over your life, and it creates an air of fear as well. Fear of being humiliated amongst your family and friends. So a lot of women will say, it's so and so's birthday next week. Oh, I'm not going to go. Do you know what? I'm not really feeling it. I'll just stick this one out. I'm going to stay at home. And we often do that for fear of, oh, what's he going to be like, or what's she going to be like when I'm there. And then there's also that when somebody has chipped away at your confidence so much, you have such little confidence left that you isolate yourself from your loved ones and your friends. So as you can see, coercive control it's just a really awful situation to find yourself in, and it's a situation where often the survivor needs some sort of outside help to really help them regain their independence, reconnect with who they are, and just try to find themselves again.
No, you're absolutely right, Shabina. Thank you for sharing that. And I think for me personally, I resonate with everything you've said there. But for me, and probably like many other women maybe watching now, like I didn't recognize that until after the relationship, because like you said, it's so insidious, isn't it? It's the patterns of behavior that build over time, not necessarily one thing that makes you go, oh right, okay. It's the patterns that perhaps are small but still important, still an important part of that behavior, but it's often not till after that relationship ends or someone says something and it kind of makes us, that light bulb goes off, that we're like, right, okay, that was what it was then. I think for me, like when you talk about coercive control, I'll be honest, I didn't know what the term was until, again, after my marriage. I literally had no idea, which is where sessions like this with your amazing knowledge are so important, I think, because the more we can understand those behaviors, those patterns, what it looks like, the more we can actually go, right, yeah, I experienced that, they did that. And then it helps release that guilt and shame, doesn't it? And I think, like you said, with coercive control, because it's not physical, it's also hard to describe, isn't it? When someone else says, yeah, but why are you feeling like that? I don't understand. Like, he hasn't done anything that bad, has he? And it's quite difficult to explain. And I can only personally, again, just explain the way I sort of ended, came out of my marriage, was I felt like I'd lost my soul. And that's the only reason I could describe it. And I think the fact that coercive control now is a criminal offence, isn't it? It's a very significant, pattern of behaviour, shall we say, that underpins all domestic abuse, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And coercive control is also paired with stalking as well, because quite often when people have managed to come away from that situation, whatever that was, quite often the abuser isn't quite ready to let go. And it can be that you find yourself in a stalking situation as well, which, as we know, is extremely dangerous. And I would say anybody who does find themselves in that situation, please get the help and the support that you need. Another thing that's really, it's so unfortunate with coercive control, is the fact that the wounds are psychological. It affects us to the core of our being. And quite often that's something which, with a bruise, yeah, okay, with a cut, you can put a plaster on it, but when it has affected you so much that you can't even remember, like you don't even feel like yourself anymore, that's when the work needs to be done. And sometimes, like I said, it can take years to slowly rebuild, but that doesn't mean that we don't do it, because we deserve to heal from these type of relationships. We deserve more, and the first step is getting that help that you need.
Definitely. No, thank you, Shabina. I think, again, I always I'm a firm believer, and again, this is all said in hindsight, but now out of that sort of dynamic, other people's narratives, other people's behaviour, their words, actions are not on you. They're not a reflection of you. They're not a reflection of your identity, your core, anything you've done. It is literally there. They need to own that, don't they? And I think, again, it's when you come out of that relationship, it's quite hard to comprehend that, because you're like, oh, what did I do wrong? Or why couldn't they just do that? Why did they do that? And obviously, sadly, the perpetrator makes it all about us, don't they? But I think, for as much as I'll talk about this till like people sort of really, really comprehend, it's nothing to do with you. It is a reflection of them. And I think the more we can start to go, okay, I don't need to hold the shame, I don't need to hold the guilt or the blame, it kind of, that's where the healing can start, because then we realize, actually, I am still me. Just because they said I was something else, or they behaved a certain way, or they did something that made me upset or hurt me, actually that's them, that's not you. And you know, like you said with coercive control, I think that sadly is a way of kind of eating away literally at your persona, isn't it? Your personality, literally your identity. But I think if we can step out of that relationship and actually go, no, this is who I am, this is who I always was, and take back that control, that power, the more we can start to sort of, you know, move along that healing journey. But as you said, Shabina, it's not easy, is it? Don't get me wrong, but it's just starting with actually I'm not to blame, and kind of, like I said, reaching out to communities perhaps like this one, or reaching out to likes of yourselves, you know, who are obviously knowledgeable and have got the lived experience, to actually come together to heal together, isn't it? You know, it's difficult to heal alone, but the more we can come together and empower each other, I think it's hugely beneficial for everyone.
Absolutely. And I think also it can still take a long time for somebody to understand what's been happening and decide to leave. You know, to and fro in, that happens a lot until we are ready, and in that place, and that safe space psychologically as well, where we are ready to say, okay, yeah, actually, you know, I'm now ready, like I don't want this anymore. And I just wanted to move on to, like, why don't victims just leave? You know, and it's easy to say, yeah, why don't you just leave then? But actually, when your confidence has been eroded so much that you're left with literally hardly any self-confidence left, it's easier to stay because it's what you know. Leaving is scary. It's almost like a trauma bond. Now, I know many of you may have heard of the term trauma bond. And it's where we form a bond with the abuser, and it's a cycle. It's a cycle that we go through. So there will be a period of building up to this, to whatever happens, and then the incident happens, and then after that you are left feeling there's a little bit of love bombing going on there, where he feels, oh, I'm so sorry, you know, I shouldn't have done what I did, and then the person on the other end of that feels, oh, actually, yeah, you know, because it kind of reignites that inner validation that they're seeking, and that continues for a little while. But then again, the cycle comes again, where the abuse and it's all the tension and the microaggressions, it all starts again, and then something happens again. That is the trauma bond cycle, and we can easily find ourselves in that, where it's almost like your abuser becomes your savior, because that bond that can be so strong. It's so strong for some people. There's hope that the abusive partner will change. It creates like emotional dependency. So a really difficult situation to kind of navigate. And a big part of that also is fear. And I think many people stay within these controlling relationships because of fear. Fear of violence. Sometimes they might be making threats. There's that fear there. There's also the fear of, like, if you have children, if you're a mum with children, you're afraid for the impact on your children. You might be afraid that somebody might take them away. You might be afraid of where we're going to go, how we're going to survive. The fear is quite, you know, it's quite big. There is also honour-based consequences for some women of certain communities. And again, that will be a massive fear of stopping them from leaving. There's the fear of, how am I going to survive financially? You know, which a lot of women talk about, like, you know, they might have been so much controlled financially that they don't know how to go out and earn money and feed their children or feed themselves. How are they going to pay their rent? And there's all those fears there as well. And also, sadly, really sadly, there is also the fear of being killed after leaving, which is the ultimate fear, isn't it? You know. And then we also have the practical barriers, which are things like housing issues, might be immigration concerns. You might be here on the spousal visa, and you might be thinking, okay, if I'm no longer with this person, I'm going to have to leave the country. So again, that would be a barrier to seeking help. There could be a lack of support. It could be that someone just does not have that supportive network anymore that maybe once upon a time they did, because the abuser has, over the years, over time, has isolated you from your support networks. So lots and lots going on there for somebody facing all of that. And unfortunately, the psychological effects of this, which I'm just going to finish on that, are things like anxiety, depression. There's low self-esteem, low self-worth. There's also a feeling of helplessness, like everything is out of my control, and also a loss of confidence. And as you touched on before, Michelle, the guilt and the shame, which quite often abusers will use to their benefit as another way of controlling you. You know, that's also something to be aware of. The reason why you might be feeling shame or guilt could be because the abuser has projected that shame and guilt onto you. You know, and one of the things I always say is there's no room for shame, there's no room for guilt in our lives. We've got to shake that off. That's not ours to keep.
No, I agree, Shabina. Thank you for that. And I think, you know, as I said before, but just to reiterate for anyone watching, knowledge is power, and it can become a really important part of your healing journey because you start to understand. And when you understand, you start to kind of recognize yourself again. You start to reconnect yourself with yourself again. So thank you for sharing that. It's really, really important. Now, Shabina, I just want to move on to sort of the honour-based abuse, because I'll be honest, it's a term I personally don't know a lot about, and I may be wrong, but I don't feel many people, you know, sort of perhaps fully understand it either. So can you just talk to us about what is honour-based abuse, and does it differ from other forms of domestic abuse?
Yeah, so as you said, honour-based abuse is a form of domestic abuse, and some people think, oh, it's associated with a certain religion. It's not. It's not associated with a certain religious aspect. It's not associated with certain culture either. Honour-based abuse happens across the board, with people from all different backgrounds. However, there are certain backgrounds in which it is more prevalent. So that was the first thing. And this type of abuse is committed to protect what people perceive to be their family honour. Okay, so it's like this is the family honour, and it's our job to protect it, to build a bubble around it so that it's protected. Okay, so honour is even placed above the individual's own safety or freedom. Honour is that important to families, more important than the safety and well-being of the family members. So, and it could be, I'll give you an example of honour-based abuse. Honour-based abuse can start really early. The example I'm going to use is from my own community. It's the South Asian community. And within this community, honour is like a thread that is intertwined. It's woven between all the things that we do. So for some bizarre reason, honour is usually enforced upon women and young girls in particular. And the whole reason for using this honour is, again, coercive control. It's used as a way of controlling women, and it's used as a way of taking away your independence, and making you live in a way in which is acceptable for the community, in their eyes. Yeah. So this is the thing. It starts with young girls, probably even before teenage. And it's really sad because a lot of this honour it comes from the mums, the mothers, the matriarchs in the family, the mothers, the grandmothers, the aunties. And this is something which I've always really struggled to understand. Like, why would a woman who's undergone honour-based abuse herself, why would she then project that onto her young daughter when she's been controlled her whole life? Why would she then like sow the seeds for her daughter to be controlled all of her life? And I really struggled with that until I got to a place where I realised it's better the devil you know than what you don't know. And I think it's a lot to do with fear of losing control of your daughters, because controlling women is a massive part of South Asian culture. And I think the honour that the mothers place upon their daughters is their way of saying, behave yourselves, toe the line, don't do anything that is going to dishonour your family, because the consequences are really serious. So girls will know this, even like as they come into teenage, they'll be told, there'll be things said to them like, you can't have a boyfriend, and that's not acceptable in our community, so don't even think about it. Even things like, you can't be seen even talking to a boy, because then somebody from the community might see you and it might be perceived as you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. You know, this is how bad it is in certain communities where there is a large population of South Asian people. And it's also things like your identity, what you wear, how you look. Some girls will be told to wear the headscarf, not everyone. And another thing is, some girls will be told, okay, yeah, the skirt that you're wearing, you can see your legs through that, so you can't wear that. So wear something that covers your body, because we don't show our legs. So can you see, it's almost like conditioning, and it starts so young. So as you can imagine, a young girl going through this, all of this, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't wear this, you're going to get an arranged marriage, you can't be friends with so and so. It's like they're monitoring your behaviors. And so when you've grown up being conditioned like that, then those values will be intrinsically forced upon you, and they'll become a part of you. So again, girls will grow up, and then when they get to school, like secondary school, that's when a lot of things change, because they'll see other girls around them who don't live in that same way. There'll be other girls who don't have the same honour that they have to preserve, and it opens their minds to, I have to live in a different way from the way that all the other girls have to live. And quite often it leads to girls questioning, okay, yeah, so and so can do that, she can, and her mum and dad don't mind, so why do mine? And it can lead to girls coming home and questioning things with their parents, with their mums, with their dads, with their brothers, like, why do I have to do this? And that's where the problem starts. Because to the family, that looks like, okay, yeah, she's not conforming, and it could then lead to things like not being allowed to do further studies. That's when the control starts. So they might then say, oh, I don't think it's a good idea for her to continue with her studies after 16 or 18. It could be something like, oh no, you can't do a certain job because that's not what good girls do. It could be something like starting to talk about marriage, forced marriages, arranged marriages. There could be restrictions on friendships because of this. A lot of monitoring going on. lots and lots of monitoring. Oh, where is she? Oh, what's she doing? You know, and all of this, as you can imagine, like for that poor girl who's undergoing all of this, it's horrific. It's really, really bad. And there's also things like the fear of physical violence. She could be scared that someone's physically going to do something to her. The emotional abuse, the threats, financial abuse. And as I said previously, unfortunately, there have been many, many cases where honour-based abuse has led to murder. So a really, really scary situation for girls to find themselves in. And as you can imagine, when you've been conditioned that way, most girls toe the line. They will do what they will behave in a way that is acceptable to their family so as not to cause any issues in terms of their family honour. And this is something which you know has been highlighted within the news. It's been talked about in Parliament because it's causing some real issues and reasons why a lot of girls don't come forward and say, look, you know, like things are like this at home, is because it's often your parents doing this to you. It's often your siblings doing this to you, controlling you. It's often extended family members, community members, and also there could be multiple perpetrators, and then you're just this one person who's like, oh my God, what do I do? Is this my culture? Is this how it is in my culture? Is this actually acceptable? Is this wrong? And again, that whole thing about honour and shame, guilt, the psychological abuse, it runs deep, you know, and it's really damaging. The psychological effects of honour-based abuse are so extreme, really difficult situations to, you know, heal from. Once women are able to get out of that situation, healing from it is a whole other journey. So really, you know, difficult times for a lot of people. And it's not just girls, it does happen to boys as well as they're growing up. In certain families, it does. But generally speaking, honour-based abuse is more directed towards females. And as I said, it is caused by controlling beliefs about honour and shame. So that young person will truly believe that if I'm seen with a boy, I am going to cause dishonour on my family. They truly believe that because they've been told this from such a young age.
It's really sad, isn't it, Shabina? I think, and for me, you know, as I said before, I'll be honest, I didn't, should I say, know the term honour-based abuse, and I genuinely really appreciate you talking about it, because I think these conversations are so important, aren't they? Not only for our own awareness, but for those women, or, you know, as you said, boys, girls, in those situations, to actually, when we're aware of something, we can support as best we can, don't get me wrong, but I think it's just important to bring that to people's awareness, isn't it? Because not many people, including myself, understand it fully, or for myself, to be honest, at all. And I think, like you said, when you're in those situations and it's involving the family dynamic as well, you know, the community dynamic, it makes it ever more difficult, doesn't it? Because as you rightly said, it's not just one perpetrator. You've then, you know, possibly got to face the consequences of, you know, whatever you choose to do, but the consequences of, you know, the family and other people, the whole community as well, which is scary, isn't it? And do you think that's why people don't kind of, you know, leave, shall we say, you know, seek help in those situations, because it's not just one kind of individual?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a big factor. It's not just one individual. It could be your whole community's against you. And that's how often a lot of people feel. And also, a lot of survivors of honour-based abuse, they love their parents. They love their siblings. And it's like, do I go against my own parents? A really difficult question to answer, you know, because they're still your family members, they're still your parents.
Yeah.
Really, really hard, really, really hard. But I wanted to also talk about the fact that it is a criminal offence, and because for those of us who are supporting, perhaps, you know, perhaps you work with somebody who might be facing honour-based abuse, or you could be somebody who supports women and girls who are in honour-based abuse relationships, that kind of thing. I think it's important for us to know legally where we stand as well. Um, there is the Crime and Policing Act of 2025, so this is all very, very recent, and it was just amazing when this went through legislation, because it gave it a definition, and it gave honour-based abuse like recognition, you know, that this does happen. And it's been amazing, because it's now specifically recognised in law, and this creates a stronger protection for victims. And I want victims to know that the law is going to protect you. If this is happening to you, there are legal provisions there for you. You will be believed. Okay, it improves professional responses, and it recognises patterns of abuse rather than isolated incidents. So people are now getting trained on honour-based abuse, like people like the police, quite often some teachers and youth workers who work with young people are now being educated on, okay, yeah, what's life like for this young person here? What does their world look like? And the more we get to understand what other people's worlds look like, the more we can support them, the better we can support them, and the more empathy we will have for them. Okay,
That's a
so
huge step forward, isn't it, that in
yeah,
itself? Yeah,
it's been
absolutely.
amazing. It's been so good, because honour-based abuse, it does still lead to awful things like harassment, assault, kidnap, murder. And for those of you who are interested to know more about this, there are cases documented. There have been documentaries made about certain women as well. There's a young girl called Shafila Ahmed, who was horrifically murdered by her father. And that was she was just a teenager, honour-based abuse. And there was another lady, I can't for the world of me remember her name now, but if anyone's interested, please do drop me a line and I will give you the details. She was a lawyer, a lady who got married, and her husband was abusive, and when she tried to leave, he used the honour as a way of stopping her from leaving. He was like, okay, yeah, you're going to dishonour my family now if you leave me. And then he ended up taking her, coercively controlling her, and taking her to Scotland, where they climbed onto Arthur's Seat, and then he pushed her off.
Horrific, isn't it?
Murdered her. Yeah, it's so horrific. And there are many cases, you know, where honour-based abuse has led to murder. So it's a really serious topic. And as I said, if you are working with somebody who discloses, you know, that they are afraid for their duty honour or anything like that, then please do get the help. You know, please do try to support them, because you might be the only person that they tell.
Yeah, no, thank you, Shabina. And then I guess with those two aspects, you know, like the coercive control and honour-based abuse, can you just talk about like the impact that would have on someone's mental health? I know you've sort of touched on it throughout the conversation, but like how was someone feeling after experiencing that? And the reason like I've asked the question is, I guess, again, so people can go, that was me, or that is me, and they can kind of resonate with that, and then they can go, actually this is normal, you know, it's normal if I'm feeling this way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it affects us to our core, um, dreams and aspirations. You know, it's almost like we give up on ourselves. It's almost like I'm afraid to dream because it's not going to happen. It's not, you could be a really academic, a really, really bright academic young person, but your parents aren't going to support you to go to university. That is out of the question. You're going to get married when you're 18, and you know that from a young age. So dreams and aspirations of doing, following the career that you really wish you could do is just going to remain a wish. These are the kinds of things that honour-based abuse does. If you are ever in a situation where you're just living a normal life, really, relationships, these are things that are all part of normal life. But there will be that fear in the back of their minds. Oh God, if someone sees me, this is going to get back to my family, and then there's consequences. And so when somebody is living with all of this, they lose so much of themselves. It's like they're afraid to dream. It's like they're afraid to do anything that is even slightly going to cause them an issue with their family. They really just give up on themselves. And so when we come out of this type of situation, women are almost like they don't know who they are. It's almost like finding yourself for the first time. It's not knowing, not having an identity, because all you've ever been is what your parents molded you and controlled you to be, and not having thoughts of your own. So it really involves going back to, okay, what are my core values, and then building on that. And so women, they find themselves needing a lot of support when they leave an honour-based abuse. When that's been happening, they might have housing needs because they've been living with their families. They might have financial needs. They might need money because, again, they might not have had any financial independence. So there's those practical things, but on an emotional level, it is huge. It's almost like you've been shamed and controlled so much that you might have had years of this. I have some clients who are now, there's a lady, she's in her 40s. So she lived with this her whole life. And now what she's trying to do is work out, okay, yeah, what do I want to do with the life that I have left? Like, who am I? What makes me happy? Because she was never allowed to pursue any of her own wants and needs. And then there's those people who are maybe from the LGBTQ plus community. Again, because of the shame, the honour, the abuse, they're not able to express themselves in a way that's normal for them. And so again, psychologically, the effect of that, not being able to just be you, it's massive. And working on shame and guilt, these things are really, really difficult. It's really difficult, and also they will come back again. It's almost like taking 2 steps forward and then 1 step back, because the guilt and shame, as you know, Michelle, it is just it's so big. It's so big. But what I always say is there's always hope. There's hope for your future. There's freedom. Once you're free of this, you can live a free life. But it's not going to be easy, because it is family members. It's everyone you know. And a lot of women who've come away because of honour-based abuse have literally had to cut themselves off from family and friends. They've had to go no contact. Really, really hard. Because again, in the back of their minds, they're thinking, if I go no contact, the dishonour on my family. So they still worry for their family who are being dishonoured within their community because they've left. It's really hard, and that is the reason why a lot of women come back.
Yeah. No, and it's heartbreaking, isn't it? Because, you know, these women, girls, anyone in this situation, they deserve freedom, don't they? They deserve to live a peaceful life, and like you said, a life that is for them, not for leading it for what other people want, the expectations of other people. Which should actually be, right, this is what I want to do with my life, and those people surrounding us should support that. And that's for me what normal looks like, isn't it? And it's sad, you know, when, like you said about these, you know, honour-based abuse within the family, you know, or with the perpetrators, it's sad that for many people it's not like that. And I mean, for anyone listening, Shabina, is there any sort of practical tips or steps, I guess, that you can talk about, please, just to help people sort of move forward if they can resonate with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first of all, it's important to talk about some of the signs that somebody might be in an abusive situation, honour-based abuse situation. And the emotional signs are things like anxiety and depression, loss of confidence, walking on eggshells, constantly apologising. These are the sort of emotional signs that you can look out for. And the behavioural things will be things like cancelling plans, not allowed to do things after work or school, and becoming isolated, always checking in with their partner or their parents, appearing frightened, and also withdrawing. So those are like practical signs, physical behavioural signs. And then the practical things that you could also consider are things like their phone's constantly being monitored, they've got no money, the partner answers lots of questions for them, so they don't really speak for themselves a lot. And they're unable to make simple decisions independently. These are really, really important things to understand. And in terms of seeking help, always believe them. Don't judge them. Don't ask, why didn't you leave? Validate them. Yeah. Say things like, I believe you, this isn't your fault, you're not alone. And again, have that safety plan in place as well. There are professionals and people who specialize in this area. You know, for those people who do find themselves in a situation where they want to get out, there's Women's Aid, first of all, that you can talk to, and they have the national helpline, which is available to anyone 24/7. And they will direct you. You know, they have specialist services within Women's Aid that specialise in things like this. So don't feel like, oh gosh, you know, what do I do? Like, if you recognise some of what we've talked about here today, that's you, and you want out, you know, Women's Aid is a really good one to speak to, and they can help you in many different ways. There's also the police, and they are now getting better educated on this as well. Yeah, so lots of things are changing that you can do. And also, I did wanted to just point out that within the community itself, things are changing. You know, and I am so happy for this. Women are now coming forward and saying, actually, you know, I lived a life like that. I'm not going to allow my daughter to live that life. You know, things are changing so much as we are now in like second, third, fourth generation within this country. And so those changes are happening, and it's having a ripple effect where the honour isn't as strong in many communities now as it used to be, say 15, 20 years ago. So changes are happening, and I'm so hopeful for that. That things will change, and you know, people in this situation will get to know, actually, no, I'm not having that, no, you can't put that on me. They will find their voice, you know, and be able to say, no, don't, that's not going to happen to me. You know, that might have been something that you did, but no, I'm not having that. And I think also, Michelle, talking about this as well, having these conversations, people like ourselves having these conversations in youth projects, at school, at college, at university. We're normalizing it now.
Yeah.
Whereas previously, people were afraid to talk about these kinds of things, thinking, oh, that's a cultural issue.
Yeah.
When now we are talking about this, and we will continue to talk about this until it's normalized. And then those people that operate in that way will soon get to realize, actually, that's wrong. So
Yeah,
changes are happening.
yeah, and I love that, Shabina, and thank you for sharing that, because I think it's about breaking those generational cycles, isn't it? You know, yes, this has been the norm, shall we say. This is, you know, how mothers have been treated, girls, you know, boys, etc. But it doesn't mean that has to continue. You know, when you've got just one person who actually speaks out and goes, actually, this is wrong, I'm not going to allow this, that has a ripple effect, you know, yes, on the generations beneath, but also, like you said, with this type of conversation, with those just listening, to go, right, someone does understand, someone is there for me, you know, someone is highlighting that this is actually not okay. And I think that in itself is so powerful, isn't it? You know, regarding obviously these topics particularly today, but domestic abuse as a whole, the more people start to openly talk about it, the more that shame is actually deflected, rightly so, away from the survivors onto the perpetrators, because we're actually, I'm a firm believer that abuse breeds in silence. And yes, I do completely respect at the same time it's not safe for everyone to speak out. And, you know, I wouldn't sort of encourage people to speak out if it's not safe for those to do so. But for those that can, it's such an important conversation to have, isn't it? And I can see huge steps, you know, within the domestic abuse sort of community, for want of a better way of putting it, in terms of those conversations starting to be more open, and people, you know, beyond the realms of those that have lived it, but people in positions of power, you know, the general community, friends, family, schools, like you mentioned, are really starting to come on board and wanting to understand it, which is really, really important, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. And the one thing that I would sort of like finish with today really is, if you're listening today and there's something that we've talked about feels familiar, please know that abuse is never your fault. No matter how much somebody is trying to shame you, blame you, it is never your fault. Love should never come with fear. Love should be love as it is. It should be unconditional. And control is not care. Okay? I want you to know that you deserve relationships built on respect, trust, and safety. And there is help available, like we said. You know, you do not have to go through this alone.
Thank you, Shabina, and I agree with everything you've just said. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for sharing your knowledge, because I feel these conversations are so important, and they're empowering and they're inspiring. And from my perspective, it's just having that knowledge, and knowledge is power, isn't it? You know, so thank you so much for joining me with these sessions and just sharing, you know, obviously your lived experience, which I know you sort of kindly did in part one of the session we did, but also today around coercive control and honour-based abuse. So it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for your time as well. And what I will do for the lovely ladies that can't join live, I will obviously be putting this in the new you group. And as I said at the start, if anyone has any questions, feel free. Hopefully you're okay with people reaching out to you directly, Shabina, or myself directly. Thank you, lovely. And I will obviously share your contact details in the group as well, so people have got them. But thank you for the ladies watching today, and for anyone watching on replay. It's lovely to see you. Sending you all so much love as always. Take care, and Shabina and I will see you soon. And thank you again, Shabina. Genuinely, really, really appreciate your time. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Michelle. It's an honour to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. Bye. Bye.